it is I, Bragi, and we're here for another story day. Oh yes, you can't beat a good story on this channel, and we have told a few as I adjust the camera. And so you do not want to be seeing me from behind a branch. Now today's story comes from the land of Scotland, the home of those very brave Scottish men and women. Oh yes, and I do love Scotland. It's a wonderful, wonderful place and country for whiskey, and the lochs are gorgeous, and the scenery, and the people are very friendly. And they love a good sing-song in Scotland, and they know how to have a good time. Oh yes. So yes, let's just go that way a little bit, hide my modern ladders. Need to move then. Another job. So today's story, as I said, comes from Scotland, and is a ghost story. So what are you going to get out of this video? You're going to get entertained for a few minutes in the old sense of a Viking telling a story. You're going to hopefully be scared by the ghost. Oh yes, a ghost of a Viking. True. And hopefully I shall be funny in this video. So yes, a long time ago, nearly 1,000 years or more, in Scotland, way up, West Scotland on the coast, there lived an old man. He was in his 40s and had a big white beard, and some hair left, and he was well known in the area for being a wise man and a good farmer and fisherman. Now, you know, like every person in the area, he likes to get up in the morning, you know, in his old croft. A croft is like a Scottish version of a longhouse, normally built on a stone structure with a good roof of beams and rafters, and normally shingled, which is wooden panels or wooden slates, or thatched, but I'd probably say thatch is more common. And you know, these croft houses are wonderful places. They're like a little farmstead. You know, you could grow your food, have your animals outside, your sheep and a few cattle, and grow some crops. And because you're on the coastline as well, you also can take advantage of fishing. And fishing was a big thing in those times, and still is today, but people don't really, you know, people go out to fish for fun. Now 1,000 years ago, if I had gone up to this old man and, you know, said, could you imagine in 1,000 years time people will be fishing for fun? You'll say, I do not believe you, for you are lying. And that is not true, but true it is, of course. And it is an art and a skill itself. My granddad, oh yes, Ragnar, his name was, he was a fisherman. And my dad, my father, Ragnar too, fished in his time. And I myself have been out in longships fishing in the seas on many occasions when I've visited friends and relatives who lived by the coast. And in those days, you know, you had fishing nets and you had lines with hooks. And if you'd wise, you would use both methods. But of course, a net is a net. You would fish it, you'd cast out, and you'd hope to catch a load of fish. Maybe anchored with some stones, you know, with holes in. They would go out to look for those stones because those stones were special. And in the Dark Ages, in the medieval times, it was not easy to drill a stone. So stones with holes in were precious, and have been used for a millennia or more, for thousands and thousands of years, for various jobs. And of course, line fishing is where you just have a line with a load of hooks, and of course the hooks are made from good mild steel, a good metal of a good quality, you hope, and they're bent and sharp, you know, the rest. And again, they have a weight at the end of the line, so the line will sink down, and these fishermen, they would know where to go, they would know where to fish, and they would know where to cast the nets. And of course, it was very important in those times to get extra food in. You know, they would catch the fish and they would hang them and dry them, and then they would last for months and months throughout those winter months when you had less food. That supply of fish and your extra crops you got in was very important. It was life and death. It really was. It was a matter between starving to death or not. And it reminds me of that scene from Game of Thrones when you have that man and his daughter in the longhouse, when that big dude with this ugly face and was going with the daughter from the north. I forget, it's a long time since I've seen it. And you know, they gave him some food, but he goes back, he travels there for some time, and he's hanging about with this bad gang, and he finds them dead because they've starved to death. And he has a decency, and it's a really good program, Game of Thrones, to bury him. And so we have our man, like I said 1,000 years ago, very much in a similar situation. He was out, every day working on his crops, tending his animals and going fishing in the morning. He'd always fish in the morning. It was the best part of the day. And they would get up very early at 4 or 5 o'clock. Whenever the sun rose, that's when they woke up. And when the sun set, it was time to settle down for the night and go to bed. And so this one day, he was walking along the coast and he saw something on the beach in the distance. He thought, what's that? And so he walked up, he walked past his longship. It's only a small one for half a dozen people, but it does the job. And so he walked past his longship where it was berthed on the beach and tied off. And he looked in the distance again. And what is that? Just like clothes. That was his guess. He had good eyesight for a man of his age. And so he went over to the place where this object was on the ground, and it was indeed a set of clothes. And he picked them up. There was like very baggy trousers and a very nice tunic and various other bits, a hoard, and he noticed there was a Thor's hammer. He knew at this very point it must have belonged to some Hiberno North Viking, or even a Viking from Norway or Sweden or even Denmark that has drowned, and somehow his clothes have washed up on the shore. And he did not know what to do. Should he pick them up? Should he leave them? Well, in those days they didn't waste anything, so he picked up the clothes and put them in his longship until later on that day when he took them back after fishing to his longhouse. And so, he went with the clothes. And he told his wife all about it. Oh, how strange that is. We'll dry them and put them in a cupboard. But they did not know what to do with them. And it was later on that evening they was both sitting around the hearth when a ghostly figure of a Viking appeared before them. And it scared them both, this ghostly figure. It looked wet and he had a big beard and he looked menacing. And he looked, confused and he didn't know where he was. He didn't speak or say a word. He just appeared and disappeared, and the wife and the husband, the man and his wife was very, very scared. And of course in the morning they told the servants and the people that lived around them about it, and they laughed. Oh, you're seeing things, you drank too much mead. But the next night it happened again, when they were sitting around the fire. And so in the last part of the story we left this Scottish man on the beach, and in the distance he saw something very strange. And so when he walked along the beach past his old longship where he goes fishing daily for fish, he came across a set of Viking clothes, some Viking trousers, a nicely decorated tunic, a cloak, and attached to the cloak was a Thor's hammer on a chain which was caught fast. Well, he thought this was very odd, as you've heard earlier, and he took the clothes back to his longhouse, his croft. And he sat down with his wife. He said, oh, have you seen this? These clothes? I don't know what this is about, but it's the first time in my life I've ever found any clothes on the beach. I found dead sailors before and dead Vikings that have drowned in the sea and ended up being washed on the beach. And of course, when that happens, you give them a good burial and send them on the way to the next life. But this is the first time he had found a set of clothes and no body. It was most strange. Some say in his longhouse, his family talked about it and they said, well, that's supernatural if you ask me, and it's not right. And so, some days passed and his family kept on talking about it. For he lived with his brothers and he lived in a big croft, a big longhouse with all of his family, because people did that in those days. If they could not afford their own longhouse on their own land, they lived together. And they talked about it. And after a few more days, it got out in the locals and in the villages. They was all talking about these clothes of this Viking warrior. And they knew that the warrior was wealthy, but the clothes were very fine and had, all nice wool. Oh, wonderful, wonderful quality. And so they knew that the man who must have had these clothes was rich. And as I said previously, when the man went to bed, the first night he saw an apparition of a ghost of a Viking standing in front of him. And again, the next night when he went to bed, the ghost appeared again before their hearth, wandering about the house looking lost, muttering to themselves, where shall I go, where shall I go? So this got out, and all the locals knew that this old man's longhouse, his croft, is now being haunted. And this continued to happen for some time. At first, he went to the local blacksmith, who was a wise man in a few villages away, and he asked him, and the blacksmith said, well, you must bury the clothes. and that will get rid of your ghost. And so at first he tried this, he got a leather sack, he didn't want to just bury them in the ground, he had respect, so he put them in a leather sack and he buried the sack. And then the night came again, and he thought, well, all it's going to be, well, there'll be no ghost and I can go my way and live my life in peace. But again, the ghost of this Viking with his big beard and long hair appeared again before him. And again he was saying, oh, I'm lost, where shall I go, where shall I go? These were the words that were muttered by the ghost. One night one of his servant ladies was walking in the longhouse and she saw the ghost and was scared to her wit's end and left the place of employment. Said, I'm not working for you no more, not whilst there's a ghost in this house. I'm afraid of no ghost, but are you? And so, more days and weeks passed. He decided to go and see an old friend who lived a few leagues away in an old croft on a cliff. And so he went to saw the old friend, an old wise man, big white beard. You could tell he's lived a long life and lived a life. And he said, well, in the old days, he said, in my grandfather's time, we would have consulted the Viking gods over this, and we would have praised to the god Odin to take away this ghost, and that probably would have worked for us. But now we live in the times of Christianity, for these are the times when these medieval people have been Christianised, and they had churches in villages, and everywhere was part of a parish. He said, now we live in these times, you must go to the priest and speak to him, for that is the only route I can see for you getting rid of your ghost. And I'm sure you agree, having a ghost come in your house every night and mutter words like, I am lost, I am nowhere to go, I am lost. It's very scary. And so, this is what the man did. The next morning he got out his best horse because he had to go to the nearest town to go and see the bishop, for his priest was away at the time on some mission. They was always sending these priests and padres away to go and Christianise somebody else. But for me, I'm staying Viking. And so the man went on his horse. He got his horse and he got an old basic medieval saddle. He took some bread and cheese and a bit of food and a container of water in a leather container. Oh, yeah, waterproof of course, so it wouldn't leak out. And he went on his way. And it was a couple of days' ride, so he stayed at an inn and for the first night and had a nice meal and a bit of mead, and he was telling some of the strangers about his ghost, and they all agreed, oh yes, you need to go and see the bishop about this. Oh yes. And so the next day he got to this town. Some say it was the town of Falkirk, but I do not know, for I've never been there. And he went to the town where the town had a massive stone cathedral church. And this is the first time he's ever seen a building like this. He could see it in the distance from leagues away. It was that big and tall. Oh, he couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. And as he got closer on his horse, this church got bigger and bigger. Now he's been to small churches, wooden structures nearby where he lives, but this was enormous. It reminded him of his granddad telling him about the halls of the Vikings, and he kind of thought about that. And he got closer to the church, and the church got bigger until he was in front of it, and literally had to look up like that to see the top of the church and the spire and the towers. And so he went in and he asked one of the preachers, one of the padres, one of the holy men, the monks, where's the bishop? I've got a terrible problem with a ghost. And he was showing the way to the bishop's quarters, and he sat down in the bishop's nice quarters with a table and chairs, luxury for those times. And he told him about his story. And the bishop agreed to do something about it. He says, I shall come to your croft in 5 days' time, and I will get rid of this ghost of a sailor for you. And this is what happened. Of course, the man had to go back. It took him 2 more days on his horse, and he stayed at the same inn on the second night. And he was telling them what the people he spoke to the couple of days before, what the bishop said, and they was happy for him because they could see an end and a result to this terrible situation this man was in. And the 5 days did pass, and the bishop was true to his word. He came with a few people. Bishops always travelled with numbers and luxury. And he came to the longhouse and he did a ceremony to get rid of the ghost. Of course, I've never seen one of them, for I am a pagan. But it is said that it worked, for the next day, when the man was waiting for the ghost to appear at night, the ghost never appeared. And that from that day onwards, for years and years of the life that was left in this man, he never saw the ghost again. The ghosts were buried in the churchyard and taken away by the bishop, and the ghost of the Viking was laid to rest. I'm sure you agree it's a terrible story to have a ghost of a Viking sailor in your house. But I'm glad it worked out in the end for both the Viking ghost and the man. I hope you've enjoyed this story, and I'm sorry it's in 2 parts, but my battery ran out during the first filming, so I made this into a 2-part story. It's a slightly repeated like the beginning. If you like our channel, if you love Northworthy sagas and stories, then please do 2 things for me. That's 4. Do 2 things, 1 and 2. 1 is to share the video. By sharing our videos, you'll help us reach and get a bigger audience, and YouTube will show us to more people. And 2, liking the video. By liking the video, it does the same thing. It lets the algorithm know that you like our videos. And if you can go and watch as many of our videos as you can and repeatedly watch them, especially the short videos, it helps more and more. So goodbye from me. Well, this is my last film of the day. Well, it's now 9 o'clock at night, and soon it will be dark out here. And where I live in Northworthy, we have wolves and bears, bandits, and even worse, Anglo-Saxons. Goodbye. Praise the gods, and praise all that watch. Whether you believe or not, it's irrelevant to me. All that matters is that you practice goodness in life. Goodness and kindness always pays. Those are my wise words for today.